Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Creature Commandos Season 1, Episode 4. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, first and foremost, we had the Commandos making their way back to the States after dealing with Cersei, because it's like, right, would be easy to kill her. And I love the whole thing of Rick being like, yo, like, we're not just going to kill her. And Lana's like, oh, but the internet kind of says that is the American way. He's like, well, that's not how it's supposed to be, which is like, we see that Rick Flag is an upstanding, junior and senior are upstanding people. And so when it's all said and done, reluctantly, he ends up having to leave Lana because he does have feelings for her, but it's just kind of like, this was never, who knows? Who knows we're in a spur of the moment type of situation, so who knows if he had any thoughts about where it was, because he doesn't define it as love. It's just kind of like a fling that happened, but, there are feelings on both sides, it seems like. But once again, I still feel like she's manipulating Rick Flag Sr., and some stuff later on kind of adds to that, but we'll get to that later. But either way, what was interesting is that Elizabeth Bates shows up, and she is she's Weasel's lawyer. Now, I think I misspoke last episode when I was talking about what was this GI Robot, because I think in my head I was treating it like GI Robot wasn't classified as human, but it's like, no, like the law does classify him as human. And that's the same thing with John. That's why he's getting representation despite his situation. He's labeled as John Doe. It's like, no, the thing's name is Weasel. It's like, no, we don't know his name is Weasel. That's why we call him John Doe. So he's not, you can't really communicate with him, but Elizabeth Bates is his lawyer, and she wants to do right by him. And I looked it up. She's a character, the quickest thing I found was just kind of like, oh, she's a character from the comics from the 40s. But it's interesting, having a lawyer, because I just brought that up last episode. I was like, oh, I don't actually know any lawyers in the DC universe. Not saying there aren't any well-known ones, but not to the level of a Matt Murdock or a Jennifer Walters type of situation, like I said, across the pond in Marvel. But either way. So I was like, oh, that's kind of, once again, James Gunn making deep pulls, because he makes another one called, what's her name, Isla McPherson. And it's like, I looked it up, a teacher from Gotham University, I think is what, I was like, oh, that's an interesting pull. But it's like, because she's the one that comes to discuss about Themyscira. We'll get to that later too, but I'm going to take this time to kind of talk about Weasel's backstory. And so how tragic it is, and you figured it would be, because once again, the whole thing is, oh, he's been accused of killing 27 children, but then Elizabeth is like, it's 8 children, and wrongfully convicted. But obviously, it's so interesting, because Rick seems like he's so oh yeah, I think for him, he's so matter-of-fact about stuff where it's like, okay, we can't assume stuff on this part, but because he is someone, I think, who does believe in the system. I think that's probably a little commentary there, right? Where there's not even a possibility for him being like, oh yeah, maybe there was something wrong with Weasel's circumstances. It's just no, I've seen how vicious he can be, so he's assuming right. Because he's like, oh, maybe this thing ain't as bad, as people say he is, but then he also saw the way him and Phosphorus jacked up Cersei, so it's okay, he's not that good, so I believe the whole he's potentially capable of ripping children apart type of thing and killing, so there's that whole thing. But we got a little flashback at the beginning of right, there's a fire, he's dragging some kid and the police are shooting at him. But then we get more context. He showed up at this school. We don't know, maybe we saw the name of the school. I didn't pay as much attention to it. It might be a significant school in the DC universe, but he befriended these kids, and they started playing with him. It's oh, we got to keep this quiet. And then all of a sudden, a guy shows up and trying to be a good citizen, kind of goes full vigilante and ends up thinking okay, these kids are in danger. That thing led them into school. Once again, he came guns ready, it's right, you see this thing that seems like a monster, you're just going to assume the worst, and just it's just so much goes wrong. The kids are playing with some alcohol they took out of their teacher's desk, and then they went to the basement, played with some matches, fire spreads, Home Dude shows up, he starts shooting at the At Weasel, it like more like some gas comes out, spreads the fire even more, and causing an explosion. It kills like nearly everyone. It's actually really, really dark, but I guess it's like, I mean, we should be prepared because since since the Suicide Squad, they've been telling us this guy murdered 27 children, and now it's like, well, he didn't kill anyone. It's just situation spiraled out of control. That wasn't his fault. Just his nature of just being there, sadly, ended up making it his fault. But yeah, like all the kids end up dying, especially that one. You see one of the kids dying, it's like, oh, that's heartbreaking. It's like, yeah, you definitely don't want to do that in live action. That'd be rough. But yeah, like he tries to save the little girl, who I don't know if it's just an animation thing of like, oh, she just happens to look like Alana, but I'm like, is there going to be something to that? You'd assume not. I mean, who knows how long ago that situation was, but I'm like, it could just be an artistic like thing of just like, yeah, she just happens to look a lot like Alana, but I'm like, that just seems too conspicuous or whatever, but who knows. But yeah, he tried to save her and the police are shooting at him, which I'm like, don't you think that's a little dangerous? Like, even if your aim is good, like stray, ricochet, you never know. Like, would that really have been the best option? But I'm like, you're trying to save the kid, but you also doomed the kid because like she got left behind, and it's just kind of like by the time you're so focused on killing this thing, you're more focused on killing it rather than saving the kid, and it's just like you left her to die. All that stuff fell on her, and I guess it's just kind of like oh, it's already too late for her. We can't do anything, but we can put this thing down. It's just like, I don't know. I think that speaks volumes about those police officers that they didn't like do their due diligence to try. Like, it's like, right, taking down the bad guy, sure, but ensuring the safety of that child first. It's like, I get, but like they didn't seem as concerned. They were just more so like, no, we need to kill this thing. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe I'm just so like just pessimistic in that regard, but I'm just like, it didn't seem like they put forth the effort they should have. And like that, that's sad. She's reaching for like Weasel, and Weasel's trying to reach back out for her, and then like the like wood from the school like falls on her, and like it seems like she dies that way. I was like, that's brutal. But I'm like, once again, her looking like Alana, is there something to that? Maybe not. I'm so curious what that school situation was, because it's like, why were those kids still there? Like, I don't know if that was supposed to be like an orphanage type of school where like these kids don't have any family or something like that. So like the school, like they weren't supposed to be able to get, because like the door was supposed to be locked, but someone left it open. So I don't know. So it's all for naught. Because once again, the guy who actually died looks like he's just another victim. Because they only talk about the children. There is an adult body there, but it might also be like there were so many charred remains. Maybe they couldn't tell. I don't know. But Elizabeth tries to get some information out of Weasel, and I think it does speak volumes that the one photo he ended up eating and spitting out was the one of the blonde little girl, the last one he tried to save. But it's like, yeah, that's so tragic, especially like the final line of the show where Nina's like, oh, what do you think he's dreaming about? And then you get the title of the episode when the bride's like, I don't know, probably, something like chasing squirrels, and you're like, oh, that's so sad. You know it's probably going to be something tragic. It's like, once again, Doom Patrol vibes. Like, Doom Patrol was riddled with trauma. I'm like, yeah, bringing over trauma. I mean, everyone's got their trauma and their circumstances. I mean, Peacemaker had some trauma associated. I mean, especially when it came to Peacemaker himself. But yeah, like I think that moments like this and how dark it can be definitely gives me Doom Patrol vibes. Obviously, there is levity to it. That's where I've talked about where it feels like a mix between the Harley Quinn animated series and the Doom Patrol TV show. But either way, that doesn't seem to be the only thing we obviously get revealed in this episode, because Frankenstein showed up, Eric, and he's, stalking his bride yet again. And he's like, oh my God, they're totally in love. And it's just like, oh my God. And he's like, oh, like it's because he can grow hair or whatever. And the guy's like, okay, let's go. And he's like, what? You think I'm less than? You think I'm some like man boy or baby because I can't grow any facial hair? The dude's like, I didn't say anything, homie. And he snaps on him, kills him, ultimately kills the pilot and stuff. And he's just like, ooh, I'm going to get that red flag. Who's after my woman? It's like, bro. We'll circle back to Frankenstein, but yeah. Oh, I forgot to talk about it when Elizabeth initially shows up. Who she's talking to? None other than John Economos. Well, I'm like, yeah. I'm curious what that like, because he has like a little kind of I don't know what you call that, like those like walker type of crutch type of things. And I was like, oh, is that implying like his leg never fully recovered from the season 1 finale of Peacemaker? Or is that kind of implying like, oh, it's just been that short amount of time, and it, I mean, a injury like that would take a, probably a very long time. So it could have easily been like, it might be like weeks or maybe months after, and obviously the alien invasion still happened, cause when James Gunn has said like the only thing that's not going to be canonical from Peacemaker will be the Justice League scene. So it's like, right, the butterfly situation did in fact happen. And she's like, oh, how'd you hurt your leg? He's like, yeah, I was trying to help stop an alien invasion. She's like, fine, don't tell me the truth. It's like, well, it was, but yeah. But then there was the interrogation with Cersei, and I just love that whole bit. And just like, once again, Waller playing like the straight man in the situation, where it's just kind of like, okay, like she's like, just her tone not changing, and just I love the whole bit where it's just kind of like, okay, you guys, they bring up the whole aspect of like Cersei being whether or not she's they said she was clairvoyant. I could not remember the word clairvoyant. And she was like, what? And Waller was like, which one is that? She's able to read people's minds. It's like, no, she's able to see the future. Oh, I was like, I love that. We're just like, I mean, you think Amanda Waller would be on her like knowledge about something like that, but it's like, I guess it's not pertinent enough information to know like the differentiation between like abilities like that or whatever. I just thought that was funny. But also like making all these like witch comparisons, could be like, oh, Maleficent in the 2nd degree, and then John it's like, oh, Bette Midler in the 3rd degree, and just Waller just being like, that's not a character, John, that's an actor. And then Rick being like, he's talking about Hocus Pocus, and she's like, again, character, not an actor. Actor, not a character. Which I'm like, what is this bit? I love it. But yeah, Cersei claims like, yo, I am trying to kill Alana because I've seen the future, and it's like, right, might be a bad guy, but we don't want the world to burn, the world, getting destroyed. That was also interesting too, because also Waller bringing up some comment about how like supervillains dress, like there's, what was he? She was like, they're sexually charged with the way they dress or something. I was like, look at you, you're kind of a bit of a prude when it comes to that. But maybe that's also supposed to be this shot against like comics when it was like, yo, like a lot of comics like uniforms for people just very like sexy and revealing, and I think that was the word that Waller used, like oh, these super villains having the most like revealing costumes or something like that. And I love that she turned to John, she's like, you like that, don't you, John, or something like that. He's like, yeah, I don't mind, something like that. I can't remember. I'm like, what is this whole sequence? But Cersei ends up showing her the future. Once again, I hadn't seen the full trailer, but people had already been talking about this like kind of nightmarish, like, universe. And we see a whole bunch of superheroes dead. We see Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. Definitely, it seemed like Vigilante, definitely Peacemaker. One of them seemed like that might have been, it was like definitely Hawk Girl. But one of them seemed like it might have been Green Arrow, but I wasn't for sure. Like it was one of the like further back shots where I'm like, someone on the far left looked like it might have been Green Arrow, but I wasn't sure. So yeah, it's just like all of these superheroes. I definitely also saw Supergirl too. So it's like, right, these characters are canon. We just haven't gotten their stories yet. So there is some Batman, there is some Wonder Woman out there. Because once again, Themyscira is a thing in this universe. Which even though it's like, oh, is it a thing? Because John's like, because Rick was like, oh yeah, because Themyscira, we don't even know if it's real. And he's like, no, it is real. He's like, but Rick's like, I know it's real, but we don't know what it really is. Is it really an island of women? And that's where Isla McPherson comes in. She's like, yeah, like what we know about Themyscira is this and that. And it's like Cersei like tried to use her powers to help people, but no one on the island, like the people who believed her on Themyscira survived like a tsunami coming. Those who didn't did. And so it's like, I forgot what the point she was also trying to make. She was trying to say like her future seeing became less altruistic. So I guess she was like, I tried to save people. They didn't want to listen. It is what it is. I'm going to start using my powers to my own benefit. So, And I even love Rick being like, yeah, but she still couldn't see like the weasel jacking her up or make phosphorus burning her face. It's like, yeah, it doesn't work like that. You don't get to choose what you see, and also you can't change what you see. Like in regards of like when you're showing that vision, you can't manipulate it. It is what it is. She sees it as it is, and it's not no like, oh, I'm manipulating this to show you a certain thing. So now they're under the belief, like, right, this might be true. Alana leads her army. I mean, we did kind of move past the fact is her army have, like, souped up pieces of armor. Not pieces of armor, full set of armor. I think it's interesting, too, because if you look at Ilana in those, that future setting, she's got a claw mark across her face. So I'm assuming that has something to do with Weasel, so... How much of this is set in stone, how much of it can be changed. That's why Cersei did what she did. I mean, but once she showed that future to Waller, because I guess she was reliving it herself while showing it, you see her like tears streaming down her face. So it does seem credible. But obviously, Rick wants nothing to do with this. But I love that Waller's like, I know you slept with her. Doesn't mean you know her character. And it's like, all right, find me someone that is a less whitey bitch and just a bitch. And it ends up being the bride that ends up getting chosen as the leader, which they're back to their thing. And, you know, Phosphorus is like, it's good to be back at the home domicile and everything. And she's like, why are you talking to me like we're friends? He's like, aren't we? And so Nina's getting bullied by some people at the prison. And ultimately, they take her food, and then you have the bride being like, yo, give her food back, and then beats the guy up. And I just love Phosphorus being like, takes the lady with the wings food and gives it to Nina, and it's like, yeah, there we go, everyone's happy. Well, I mean, except for you, because you don't have any food and you're ugly, and him because his jaw's busted open and he might be dead. And then, you know, John comes to the bride about leading this squad. So, makes sense. Something else, like during that, I want to go back really quickly to the Ilana future situation. There was a gorilla with her, which I've talked about it all the time. Like every time I see a gorilla in the DC universe, I just assume it's Gorilla Grodd. I mean, that was everyone's immediate assumption when was it Charlie or whatever? The gorilla from Peacemaker? That was just everyone's assumption. Like, oh, is that Gorilla Grodd? No, it wasn't. It just ended up being like a gorilla that got possessed by a butterfly, I believe. Either way, when I see a gorilla, I just assume it's it's Gorilla Grodd. It's not. I mean, now I know, like, well, it could be Gorilla Grodd or it could be Mala. So, which, interesting enough, Mala's the one that's kind of gotten a lot more play recently with, like, adaptation-wise. Because, like, I think, like, the only time we've seen Gorilla Grodd pop up in most adaptations, like, outside of the Injustice video game, and I'd assume he's in the Injustice movie that got adapted. I don't know what role he plays in. Well, obviously, if he's in a video game, that must mean he's probably in the comic story as well. But either way, like, outside of that, it's like he's mainly been, like, made appearances throughout the Flash TV show. And I don't remember the last time he popped up in the TV show. I was like, I don't think it was in the final season, so it could have been, like, season 7 or 8. He had a final appearance or a final storyline in that, if I remember correctly. But obviously Mala most recently popped up in the Doom Patrol TV show, and My Adventures with Superman. There was something else he popped up in recently, and I don't remember. I could have sworn there was like a third thing he popped up in like fairly recently, and I just don't remember what it was. But now I'm sitting here thinking about it, I'm like, Gorilla Grodd might have been in like Harley Quinn or Kite Man, hell yeah, if I remember correctly. Not like more like a background character, I think. Whatever the case may be. I'm curious to see which one of them. Since Brain wasn't there, I'm assuming Gorilla Grodd, but it could have easily just been Mala, or hell, it could just be just a completely different ape. Once again, different gorilla, because like I said, Mala and Grodd are the only ones I'm familiar with in the DC universe now. So, but either way, Rick is trying to warn everyone, back with Ilana about what's coming her way. And he goes home and gets attacked by Frankenstein, who's tossing him around. And now, like, gets on top of him. He's like, yo, I'm sure your eyes aren't bulletproof. And he's like, yeah, I'm in some comfortable position on top of you. He's like, oh, I bet you love her. He's like, are you talking about the princess? And she's like, oh, you call her princess now? Is that your little cute nickname for her? He's like, what are you talking about, guy? He's like, oh, wait, are you talking about... He's like, oh, you're talking about the bride. He's like, of course, who else would I be talking about? He's like, dude, I'm not into her. She's not my type, and I'm not her type. And he's like, she's everyone's type, and so are you. Which I'm like, this guy is a hot mess. And he's like, all right, dude, I'm going to get down and we're just going to talk this out, okay? And he tells him everything. He's like, oh my God, that's such a beautiful love story. He's like, I wouldn't go as far as love. He's like, no, it's love. It's meant to be. I'm like, I mean, you are a very obsessive, delusional romantic. I don't want to even put romantic in the you think yourself as like an honorable romantic. It's like, no, you're a stalker and you're crazy, you know? You'd be kind of what they'd call a yandere. You're definitely in your yandere bag. So, and I love that him being like, oh yeah, it's kind of like, he's like, oh, it's like Titanic. Have you ever seen it? He's like, yes. He's like, like, you know, not many people have, which is like, my brain immediately went two ways. Either like the less likely thing, I'm like, is that trying to imply in this universe Titanic wasn't the big blockbuster that is? I was like, that'd be funny if that was the case, but I doubt it. It's just the thing of he's assuming no one's seen Titanic, and it's just like, which once again, so interesting, like very specific references. Once again, whether it's the Jamie Kennedy experience from like the early 2000s. Now this, you're talking about a movie from the 90s. He also talks about Harry Met Sally, because he's like, you guys have more, you and the princess are more like Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, which I think is so interesting that didn't call them by their character names. It's like, it's Rose and Jack, right? But like calls them by the actor's name, because I guess it's easier for people like, oh, because probably a lot of people don't remember Jack and Rose's name type of thing. But he's like, oh, but we're more like Harry Met Sally. And it's just like, I love that he's like, oh yeah, and the woman was so overwhelmed that she basically had pleasure in her pants, or pleasurable release in her pants or something. And Rick's like, I don't think that's what that scene was about. So he's like, what was it? He made some reference of like, who is king of the world, you or Leonardo DiCaprio? I can't tell. And then he's like, Leo? And then Frankenstein's like, no, buddy, it's you. Which I'm like, oh, this is such a weird thing. And it's just like, okay, I will help you out if you help me out. And then Frankenstein's like, best friends. And then like Rick's like, what? Whatever. It's just like, what is this weird situation? It's also effed up to get what you want. You're working with the bride stalker. That is effed up. So that's how Frankenstein's going to be brought even more so into the fold. So wild episode, wild, interesting, crazy circumstances. It's going to be interesting to see where all this goes. Obviously, we have Nina and the bride getting a little closer after the whole thing, because it's like, well, I kind of owed you. I almost kind of got you killed. She's like, yeah, but I almost lost my life, so you get me my food back in the cafeteria kind of doesn't really cover that. But I did love that line from the bride where it's just because Nina was like, oh, have you ever killed anyone before? She's like, yes. And Nina's like, do I look like I've killed anyone before? It's like, no, you don't. But she's like, are you okay with killing a princess? She's like, one less human, more room for the monsters to roam. Which I was like, ooh, I like that. I don't know, I really like that thought process. But either way, it's going to be interesting to see where the next episode takes us with all this. That's probably going to be a big confrontation, not only with just the Ilana of it all, but also Frankenstein on the way, well, Eric on the way. So how that plays out is going to be interesting too. So. And maybe in these next episodes, we'll learn about those who remain in our squad. We still need to learn about Phosphorus. We still need to learn about Nina. We also don't know if that GI robot situation, I brought it up last episode of like, maybe they could fix him and bring him back, but there was like no mention of GI robot at all. And it's like, well, robot died, so we're just kind of going to keep it pushing. Even though like, obviously Nina was the one the most heartbroken about it, but it's like, I don't know if, whether that's like a can he be fixed type of thing, or whether he is like dead. Once again, it's a Suicide Squad situation, so sometimes dead is just dead. But he is a robot, so there's a chance he could be brought back. Who knows? We'll have to see if the future of the show, like the next episodes, cover anything on that front or not. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.